All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're going deep on Elvis Presley's very first movie, Love Me Tender.
That's right, his first one.
That's right, Love Me Tender. And we have some really cool excerpts here from the official Elvis Presley website.
Oh, excellent.
And I think this is going to be really interesting because I think a lot of people know the title track, but I don't think a lot of people know a lot about the movie.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all that today.
This is a good one because it has a lot of elements to it.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
music, obviously,
Well, in history,
and history, you're right.
this movie is set in 1865.
Yeah, the final days of the Civil War.
The final days of the Civil War. So,
It's not a typical Elvis movie.
no, not at all.
You're not going to see, like the bright lights of Vegas or anything like that.
Elvis in a Civil War movie?
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of crazy.
A little unexpected.
Yeah, so the movie centers around the Reno brothers and their Confederate soldiers who are returning home from the war.
No, they don't know that the war is over.
They don't know the war is over.
Yeah, and that's a key point, right? Because imagine you've
Right.
been away fighting and you come home and the world is completely different than how you left it.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? Like
Yeah.
1865, the country was completely different. It was in this massive transition, this massive upheaval, and to come home to that not knowing what you're going to find would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, and they've been fighting for the Confederacy.
Right.
So they're coming back to a place that has very different values now than what they were fighting for.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of reconcile with all of that.
And as if that's not enough, they steal a Union Army payroll on their way home.
Yes,
So they're not just coming home to a different world, but they're bringing some baggage with them.
exactly. And, stolen money, that always adds a layer of
Yeah, danger.
right.
Yeah, and especially back then, I mean, that's a huge thing.
Absolutely. So it's not just a simple love story or anything like that. This film's got action, it's got drama, it's got history.
Okay, so let's talk about Elvis.
Yeah.
So this is his debut, right? He plays Clint Reno, the youngest of these brothers.
That's right, Clint Reno.
But wasn't he like already a huge star at this point?
Oh, yeah. 1956, Elvis was a phenomenon.
Okay.
I mean, his music was already, topping the charts.
Yeah.
And people were going crazy for him. His performances,
Right.
like, the dancing and the music, it was all so new and different.
Right.
So to have him in a movie, this was a really big deal.
I can imagine. And like the anticipation must have been crazy. I mean, people were probably lining up to see this film.
They were.
And it's funny because this is his first acting role,
Yeah.
but he still managed to perform 4 songs in the movie,
Including the title track.
including Love Me Tender,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
So, even though it was his first acting role, they made sure to get the music in there.
They did, yeah. Okay, so we got the Civil War, we got the stolen money, but then there's also this love triangle, right?
Yes.
The excerpts mention Kathy Reno.
Mm-hmm.
She's the love interest,
She is.
and she's caught between these 3 brothers,
That's right.
which, that's complicated enough.
Yeah.
But when you add in the fact that,
Right.
they just got back from war and everyone thinks they're dead.
Exactly. It's not just a simple love triangle.
No, it's not.
So the story goes
Yeah.
that Kathy, she was in love with Vance. That's the oldest brother.
Okay.
And when he's presumed dead,
Right.
she finds comfort and eventually ends up marrying the youngest brother, Clint, who is played by Elvis.
Oh, wow.
But then Vance
Yeah.
comes back.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so now you've got
Oh, my God.
2 brothers who were presumed dead, one of whom is now married to the woman who was in love with the other brother.
So she's married to Elvis, and her supposedly dead ex comes back.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
Lots of drama there.
Oh, wow.
It's very Shakespearean in a way,
Yeah, like a Southern
Southern
Shakespeare with Elvis. Oh, my gosh. And all this is happening against the backdrop of a nation that's literally trying to piece itself back together.
Yeah, you've got the personal drama, the family drama, and then the larger societal drama of the post-Civil War South.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
This movie is way more complex than I ever imagined.
Yeah, it's more than just a musical, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like they took every single element of a classic drama and just rolled it all into one film.
And then they added Elvis.
And then they added Elvis. It's wild.
It's a recipe for success, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can see why this movie resonated with audiences back then and why it's still fascinating today.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm like hooked already, and we've only just scratched the surface.
We've only just begun.
I know.
There's so much more to explore.
I know there is. I can't wait.
So buckle up. We're going
Yeah.
deep.
I am so fascinated by all of this. Like, we've got the Civil War, stolen money, a love triangle, and Elvis in his very first role.
And he does a great job, too.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, for his first time acting, he's really got a natural presence on screen.
That's awesome.
It's really something.
It's crazy how Love Me Tender manages to weave all these different elements together, you know? It's not just a fluffy love story. It really dives into, like, betrayal and forgiveness and what it means to rebuild your life when everything's been turned upside down.
Exactly. It's about resilience, you know? And that's something that probably resonated with people back then, especially after the Civil War.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the title Love Me Tender before. Obviously a classic song.
Oh, yeah.
But does it, like, tie into these deeper themes that we've been talking about?
It does, actually. I mean, on the surface, it's a romantic ballad, right? But when you really listen to those lyrics,
Yeah.
there's this undercurrent of longing and vulnerability, even fear of loss,
Oh, I see.
which are all emotions that the characters are grappling with throughout the film, you know? Dealing with betrayal, the aftermath of the war, trying to find love and connection in a world that's been shattered.
Wow, I never thought of it that way, but you're right. The lyrics definitely echo those feelings.
They do. And remember, this is Elvis's first time acting, so the film really relies on his ability to portray Clint's emotional journey convincingly.
Yeah.
And I think Love Me Tender, that song, becomes a powerful tool for him to do just that, you know, to express those feelings of vulnerability and longing.
That's so interesting. So I gotta ask, did he pull it off? Did Elvis capture those complexities and do the story justice?
From what I've read, he did a fantastic job.
Really?
Yeah, the reviews at the time praised his charisma and his ability to convey Clint's innocence and vulnerability, which isn't easy, especially for a first-time actor.
That's awesome to hear.
And you can imagine the excitement surrounding his performance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Elvis was already a huge star, so this film was like a cultural event.
Totally. So it was a hit then?
Oh, yeah, smash hit. People flocked to see Elvis on the big screen.
Wow. That's incredible. So this one movie set during the Civil War basically launched Elvis Presley into superstardom.
It did. And it showed that his appeal went way beyond just music.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about. And I want to know more about the other actors who brought this story to life.
Sure.
The excerpts mentioned Richard Egan and Deborah Paget.
Yeah, they were both pretty well known at the time.
Okay.
Richard Egan played Vance Reno, the oldest brother, and he was known for his roles in westerns and dramas.
Oh, cool.
And Deborah Paget, who played Kathy, was a rising star known for her beauty and talent.
So they got a talented cast to support Elvis in his debut.
Absolutely. They really surrounded him with some seasoned professionals.
And what about the director, Robert D. Webb? What was his style like?
Robert D. Webb was a great director. He was known for his westerns and action films.
Oh, so he knew how to create some excitement on screen.
Exactly. And his experience with those genres probably influenced the film's pacing and the visuals, you know. It gave the Civil War setting a real sense of adventure and drama.
I can see that, especially with the whole stolen payroll subplot. It sounds like everything just came together perfectly. The cast, the director, the story, and of course, Elvis and his music to create this really powerful film.
And don't forget the historical context, too, you know.
Oh, right. Like what was going on in the world when this movie came out?
Well, 1956 was a time of big changes in America.
Yeah.
The civil rights movement was gaining momentum,
Okay.
and there were growing tensions over issues of race and equality.
So this movie, set in the post-Civil War South, with its themes of division and reconciliation, it must have struck a chord with audiences at the time.
Oh, absolutely, you know. Even though the film was set in the past, it probably reflected a lot of the anxieties and hopes that people were feeling in that moment.
It's like a reminder that even a simple love story can hold these deeper meanings and connect with audiences on a really personal level.
Exactly, and it shows how film can transcend time, you know? It can tell stories that resonate across generations.
That's so true. Okay, so we've talked about the history, the plot, the actors, but what did the critics think of Love Me Tender?
Well, the reviews were actually pretty mixed.
Really?
Yeah, some critics praised Elvis's natural charisma and how he connected with the audience, but others thought his acting was a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, I mean, it was his first time acting.
Exactly.
You know, I can see how it might not have been perfect.
But even with the mixed reviews, the film was a box office success. People loved it.
That's awesome. It really launched Elvis's career in a big way.
It did. Love Me Tender was just the beginning for him.
That's so wild. To think that this one film set against the backdrop of the Civil War propelled him into becoming a Hollywood icon.
It's really a remarkable story.
It is, and it makes me wonder what Elvis thought about it all, you know? Did he have any idea of the impact Love Me Tender would have on his life?
It's hard to know for sure, but you can imagine he must have been thrilled with the success.
Yeah,
But no matter what, Love Me Tender holds a special place in Elvis's filmography.
for sure. It's like a snapshot of him at the very start of his acting journey.
Exactly, full of potential. And that raw talent that made him a legend.
You've given us so much to think about today. It's really incredible.
My pleasure. You know, it's always exciting to dig deeper into these stories and uncover those hidden layers of meaning.
Yeah, and Love Me Tender has turned out to be way more fascinating than I ever expected.
It's got a little bit of everything, you know? History, romance, action, drama.
Yeah, it's a real gem.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, I just want to make sure we highlight some of the key things we've learned today.
Sure.
So, Love Me Tender takes place during the final days of the Civil War.
A time of immense change and turmoil.
Right, and the plot revolves around a stolen Union payroll, a love triangle between three brothers and Kathy Reno, and it deals with these really complex themes of betrayal, forgiveness, and rebuilding your life after a massive conflict.
It's a story about resilience and second chances.
And of course, we can't forget that this was Elvis Presley's very first film.
His debut on the silver screen.
We talked about his performance, how the critics reacted, and the undeniable impact Love Me Tender had on launching his incredibly successful career.
It's amazing to think how this one film, blending history, romance, and music, played such a big role in shaping Elvis Presley's legacy.
It really is, and it's got me wanting to learn even more about his other films and see how his acting evolved over time.
I think you'll find it fascinating. You know, each film tells a different story, but they all offer a glimpse into who Elvis was as an artist and as a person.
I'm definitely adding those to my watch list.
I think you'll enjoy them.
I'm sure I will. Wow, this whole deep dive into Love Me Tender has been amazing.
It really has.
It's like we went from just knowing the song and the basic plot to really understanding the film, like its historical context and the impact it had on Elvis.
Yeah, I mean, we really dug deep and uncovered some fascinating stuff.
We did. And it's got me thinking, what would Elvis fans today, especially those who discovered him later, what would they find surprising about this movie?
That's a good question. I think they'd be surprised by how young and almost innocent Elvis seems in the film,
Oh, yeah?
He was only 21 when he made Love Me Tender.
Wow, that's so young.
Yeah, so his persona, like the Elvis we all know, was still developing at that point.
Right.
And there's this rawness to his performance that's really captivating.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to think of Elvis, later in his career with the jumpsuits and the big stage presence.
Oh, exactly.
So to see him in this earlier role at the very beginning would be pretty cool.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think they'd also be intrigued by the film's themes, especially the portrayal of the South after the Civil War.
Yeah, that was a really interesting aspect.
It's a reminder that Elvis's films weren't always just about entertainment. They often touched on these bigger social and historical issues.
It's like a reflection of what was going on in the world at the time.
Exactly.
It makes his work even more meaningful, I think.
Definitely. It adds that extra layer of depth.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
Knowing that Love Me Tender was Elvis's very first movie, how do you think it shaped his career? Did it influence his later roles or even his music?
Well, it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But it's possible that the success of Love Me Tender gave him the confidence to take on more dramatic roles in his later films.
Like he proved he could act.
Exactly. And maybe it even influenced his music, Maybe it led him to incorporate more ballads and emotional songs into his repertoire.
Oh, yeah, like Love Me Tender was such a huge hit.
Exactly.
So maybe he saw the power of those kinds of songs.
It's definitely possible.
Wow, it's making me want to go back and watch his other films and listen to his music with a whole new perspective,
I think you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might discover some new connections and influences you hadn't noticed before.
I think you're right. That's a great idea.
And who knows, maybe it'll inspire another deep dive.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, this has been an incredible journey. I mean, we really uncovered so much about Love Me Tender today.
We did. It's been a pleasure exploring it with you.
Likewise. We went from the history to the plot, the music, the impact on Elvis's career. It's amazing how much depth there is to this film.
It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, even about things we think we already know.
That's so true. So to everyone listening, if you haven't seen Love Me Tender yet, I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It is. Watch the film, listen to the soundtrack, and let yourself be transported back to 1956 to the beginning of Elvis Presley's incredible journey on the big screen.
It's a journey worth taking.
It really is. And that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.